Jason, no? Just seen it's Terry, Jeff, and I think Susan's out of town. So I think it's just Terry and Jeff that we're missing. All
Hey,
right.
Matt, you got it. I see, Matt. What's your big? You got what's the biggest event you have in the summer coming up?
He did come off of mute. I don't know if he's having audio problems. Oh, he must be. He dropped.
Hmm.
So either that else you really stumped him with that question,
Yeah,
Tom.
he was trying to figure it out. That's not good, big dog. Come up with something faster than that, Matt.
There he is. Matt, do we have you yet? Lost somebody. We just lose somebody?
Darren was on for a second.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Gotcha now, Matt.
Okay. Yeah, I'm working from home today, so I'm trying to do a deal with a different setup.
Gotcha.
I'm answering your question. The next weekend is probably our biggest event. It's the IWLCA Girls Lacrosse Tournament. So it's
Yep.
256 teams. Very few are actually from Maryland, and they're
Nice.
here all weekend next weekend. So
So 250 teams, most not from. My daughter played in that for 2 years, so I'm very familiar with that particular one. Of the 200, so people stay overnight. I mean, it's a big tourism thing as well as a big lacrosse thing, girls lacrosse.
yeah, I think they're like close to 3,200 room nights for the one weekend.
Mhm.
Wow.
That's
We
cool.
did MLS Next back in May, and they were 4,200 room nights, but that was over 5 days.
Hmm.
Okay, I wanted to get going. I know we lost Darren. He dropped off, and I didn't see Terry come on yet. He's kind of
I think Terry's heading to Switzerland.
he's having what?
He's going to Switzerland. I just can't remember when he's leaving. He might be already on the plane.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right. Well, I see. Just seeing things move around. Okay, well, let's jump in then and get started. And thanks everybody for getting back on board with this. As everybody's aware, and just to make sure everybody is aware, the council was very supportive and gave us the $100,000, which was option one that we recommended. Which the intent of that is that we partner that up with money. Equal money from Maryland Stadium Authority to do a more comprehensive study on sports and what is needed facility-wise across the state, and then more specifically, what's needed and what would be of best use here in Montgomery County. So, with that being said, what I wanted to do today was kind of go through a couple of things, and I think Terry has all the answers to these questions, but hopefully as a group, maybe we've got some past experience that we can glean on to try and get things moving. The first piece to me was the letter to MSA for the request. We've got to get this letter. I know, and I had a short communication with Terry, and he did say we just need to get the letter issued. And sent over to MSA for the request of the study. Does anybody have any experience with developing that letter, or has anybody seen any previous letters or submittals in regards to this type
I
of
don't know if I
request?
have an example, but it's pretty simple. I think it's just a request from, it has to be, it will probably have to come from the council itself. Because it has to be an entity of the county to request the partnership, and that'll kick everything off, and then they'll go from there. I think it's just a simple letter asking for assistance.
Do you know what kind of information they need, though? I imagine, Matt, that and from the previous conversations and meeting with Terry, is they get a bunch of requests. So do we just have to give a summary, similar to what we put in the memo to request to the council? Or
I would use that. Yeah, that's a great baseline. You background on the Sports Tourism Task Force, why it was formed, the progress, the date that we were provided the award from the council, and the ask of the Stadium Authority. Did I miss anything, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a formality than anything. It just has to be, it's the official request for MSA to be involved.
okay. So we don't need any details of kind of the study that we're looking for. It's just more of the request, and then
Yeah. They'll come back with the due diligence on it and find out exactly what we're asking for and timelines and scope and all that stuff.
okay. And then I was trying to go back into as well. I think when we were talking to Terry about that, the request is technically being made for fiscal year 26, which starts July 1st. And does anybody recall that from Terry? I thought he said that the timeline could actually work into this year.
That I don't remember, but we won't get allocated the money till fiscal year 26, correct?
Right.
That's it.
I
Yeah,
wonder if,
Go
I
ahead.
wonder if he has money left over this year that he's trying to also, it's probably too late, but I know
Yeah.
that some of the state agencies have money that they're trying to move
They don't-
quick.
They don't work that way because they're
Okay.
a quasi state agency.
I do remember, Keith, exactly as you described it. There was some conversation where I thought that's what Terry said, but better for him to tell than for us
Yeah.
to guess.
Yeah, we'll have to pull it up. So the biggest thing is that I'll work on a draft of the letter. I'll pull some of that information together, share it with everybody, and then we'll have to work with council. I would imagine that it would, I don't know if it gets a signature of just the council president, all the council members, but we'll make that request up and see how that process works. And hopefully get that. That's our priority, so we'll work on getting that done as quickly as possible here. Does anybody have experience as far as the study scope itself? I know we had kind of drafted originally when we thought we were going to get financial support from the beginning. We had drafted kind of a scope, and then we tabled that to do the study with the interns. However, going through this process with MSA, is the scope something that's worked on together with MSA and the consultant, or is that something that we need to be kind of, locked down and ready to present to them?
It'll probably be a conversation between us and them to make sure that we're asking what we want and it's something that they're feasible to do in the timeline.
Gotcha.
Is the they, Matt, when you answered that question, MSA or the consultant?
It will be MSA first.
Yeah, okay.
Gotcha. Because then that'll determine what consultant they probably work with, right, Matt?
Correct. I mean, more than likely it'll be Crossroads because they're the ones that
Yeah.
typically do it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out, as we look at this as a group, I'm just trying to figure out the timing of it as far as, if we got to make the request and then we've got to wait to hear from MSA, or is there any legwork that we can do or we need to do prior to speaking with MSA? And it sounds to me, again, without hearing it directly from Terry, but Matt, based on your experience, it sounds to me like we kind of make the request and then wait to hear from MSA and then start talking about the scope.
Yeah. that's typically the way it's worked in the past. So I don't know why shouldn't vary for this one.
Okay, so then that sounds like it. All right. All right, well, based on that, I'm also trying to figure out then for us moving forward. I think one of the things that we talked about, the only other thing that we have as a task force that we've got to do is the additional work, which is, I believe the group agreed with the secondary work, which is related to marketing and workforce development. That would really come after we determine what type of facility we would be recommending. Is that everybody still in agreement on that? And there's no, I'm trying to figure out if there's any legwork we need to start working on in the meantime.
I mean, I think we should have that conversation with MSA first and find out what they're going to ask and what they want from us before we start just spinning our wheels, but not knowing the answer.
Yeah, and I agree. The basic reality is if we're talking about workforce and other economic employment possibilities, it really matters whether it's inside or outside and just basics like that. So it feels like we would need to be further along before we get too far down the road on the auxiliary benefits.
Agreed. Okay, so then how do we want to set it up for meetings moving forward, given this timeline? Should we just wait to hear back from MSA before we reconvene, or should we leave the monthly meeting scheduled and then we can just touch base based on the needs and where we stand in the process and try to figure out what works best for everybody's calendar as we sounds like we've got to issue this letter, we've got to wait a little bit to hear back, and then we can get the process going again.
I would get the letter done and you could probably just get all of us to sign off on it, like via email. That's
Yes.
gonna really determine the next steps is, the response to that letter.
I would say,
I agree.
from my side, Keith, I would say leave the meeting on the schedule because it's going to be easier to take it off than it is to put it back on.
Perfect. Yeah, there's an agreement with that. Okay. And I
Is
agree,
there a
Kelly.
sense? I'm sorry, Keith, just a question of maybe Matt or is Terry, what's role does Terry play when it comes to, I'm never quite sure with Terry and MSA. Is he a determinant on the other side? Are we asking him, or is he on our side, or is he separate? He's outside of the whole discussion.
He'll be part of the discussion. He'll be, somebody that has input to it. But the person we're going to talk to, his name is Al Tyler. He's the vice president for capital projects. So he's the head of all these studies, and then he has people under him because this is really a construction question. So that's why that side of the group gets involved.
Al was in my leadership Maryland class.
Oh, really?
I went
Just
to high school
saying.
with his brother.
Yeah, that's good.
Got it. Okay. So Tom, kind of along those questions, I think you raise a good point though, is, Terry's involvement and his involvement with this committee and then his relationship with MSA. Is there anything there that he needs to be kind of separate from? I guess, is that kind of where you're asking?
That's a good question too. I was really asking as in the sense of if he were like in the call, right? Matt has been a resource because he seems to be the one who knows the most about this particular interaction with MSA. My thought was really about, is Terry able to answer some of these things directly? In which case the next meeting should have Terry here so we can get, if he does, but not to put pressure on him, but meaning, what's the next step? What should we be doing? Is there any sequencing? Is there background work we can be doing now, et cetera? But that was where I was going. I wasn't sort of concerned about any conflict. I was just looking at him as a expert resource to us as we try to be as efficient, but also just as effective as we can be. In the early stages, maybe we want to be sharp as we can be so we get as much out of this whole project as we can.
Agreed. And I also want to be mindful that we don't put Terry in any type of position. So that's
Yeah, agree with that
Matt,
too.
We'll lean on you on that, Matt, to help us guide us through that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So yes, so the follow up here is just Kelly, going back to your point, yes, we'll get a draft of the letter done ASAP, and we'll circulate it to the task force first to make sure everybody's in agreement. And appreciate everybody's input as with the memos and stuff in the past. We'll get that in final form, and then we'll work it through council process to making sure we're getting the right signature on that. But that'll start immediately. Does anybody else have anything else to talk about today?
I just I don't see Nat. I see somebody from Natalie's office. I don't know, but just really want to express gratitude to both you, Keith, to get the letter done and often, and you know, it was a time frame thing, and it was same kind of thing that we weren't quite sure what we were saying to make it through, and then some friends on the council delivered. You know, it doesn't always work that way. I'm a big fan of acknowledging that's a big deal. We'd be dead in the water if we didn't have this, and now we're back in business. So, kudos to those of you who made that. You led it internally, and I suspect Natalie had something to do with helping us along the road on when it got to the questions on the at the council level, because this is a tough year. We keep hearing about budgets, so you know, good work by those of you who made it happen.
Yeah, Tom, and I'll continue along that line. I appreciate everybody who showed up for the hearing, and you know, we didn't even have an opportunity to, it was just covered. We didn't even have an opportunity to present, which sometimes is better. But we appreciate everybody's support, and there was a lot of work done in the background on this one, and appreciate everybody's support on that. And I know Council Member Gonzalez, you know, was a lead, of course, on that, and appreciate all of her support in regards to it. This meeting would have been completely different if we didn't get this funding, right? I mean, we would have been talking about what are we doing winding down, and so hopefully we can do what we were originally charged with, and you know, make this happen hopefully within a year, and get a recommendation together. I think that time it'll work out nice. So other than that, if nobody else has anything, you know, I'll probably give everybody their time back or work on the letter, and we'll keep the process moving. We'll leave the meetings on the calendar, and as you suggested, I think that's the easiest way to give people time back if there's nothing to meet on. Otherwise, let's leave it on our schedule, and hopefully things start moving pretty quick. Kelly, did you have anything? Nope. Adrian, good? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. See ya.
Yeah.
See ya.